The Hail to the Victors fight song states that they are the champions of the West. Well, of course, they are the champions of college football in 2023. And for right now, it is all quiet for the champions of the West. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. We welcome you into the Big Ten Live Show here at the Voice of College Football, and we will explain, of course. Right next to me, we got Tim Prangley, host here at the Voice of College Football over on the USC channel on a regular basis. Of course, we've got our Monday night show. Tim has his show directly after this show. So your Friday night is scheduled for you. You're welcome. Your Friday night scheduled for you. 2 hours with us, Tim and I, and then a double dose of Tim. Yes, you can stand it. Double dose of Tim with Matt Zemek to buffer it over on the USC channel, of course, taking your calls. We'll keep it to Eastern time, 7 to 9 here, 9 to 11, or whenever they decide to shut down over there on the USC channel. Tim, how you doing tonight?
It's definitely been a week of news, that's for sure. So just happy to get into it.
Yeah, and what I was alluding to off the top in terms of it being quiet on the Michigan front, and that being a good thing, is that, of course, we've seen this cascade of transfer portal activity starting with Nick Saban's retirement. Basically, all the transfer portal activity that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we can thank Nick Saban for. It's all because of Nick Saban retiring. He leaves Alabama. They lose a mass exodus of players. Kalen DeBoer gets that job. Washington, even more so. And this is a topic we're going to hit. Of course, Washington, as a new member of the Big Ten, losing the count right now is 23 players. And some of those guys are significant. So Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington. Washington loses players. Jed Fish, Arizona to Washington. Of course, we've seen the Wildcats actually do a decent job. I've been impressed with Brent Brennan stepping in from San Jose State and what he's been able to accomplish in Tucson in keeping most of his players. And then Ken Niumatalolo, who had a fine run at Navy for a long time, going to San Jose State. And so we've just seen this cascade of players come out of those 4 schools. Well, it's been, let's see, we're coming to on a Friday night. It was about 48 hours ago. We were here with the recent news just broke that Jim Harbaugh was leaving Michigan, going to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the floodgates have not opened yet. Now, Tim, I think one portion of that, there's a few different factors here. One would be, I am going to give a lot of credit to the Michigan culture, and I have. So I need a pat on the back, Michigan fans, because for as much as I get accused of piling on the maize and blue, I have given them so much credit for culture and being able to build the program that they have. So I think that there is something there. I also think that they're just losing so many NFL players to the draft that they only have so many players coming back. They have 22 legitimate draft eligible players. Not all those guys are going to get drafted, but it would not be a surprise if any of those 22 players got drafted. That's how many they've got. And then on top of that, they have a state law in Michigan that they have to open a search or at least have the application process open for a week for somebody to apply to any state job. And therefore, technically, they cannot name a new coach for at least 7 more days. And so I got to think that if they're doing their due diligence in trying to retain this roster, that they're being very upfront with the players to say, hey, we have a plan in place. We know what we want to do. And even if they want to say wink, wink, put 2 and 2 together, the guy that you like here is the offensive coordinator. He's going to be the guy. So just hang tight, but we can't announce this for 7 or 8 days. So just don't hit the transfer portal because you're still going to have 22, 23 days to do that, even if you make that decision after we name the coach. So if you put all that together, I guess we shouldn't be surprised that Michigan has been able to retain its roster, at least thus far.
Mark, actually, the reports coming out right now, Adam Schefter also said that Sharon Moore is the head coach. So I think it has been announced.
There you go. I guess they can do that then. I was hearing that they had to wait a week or have some kind of application process available for a week. So anyway, that was not necessarily the case. Okay. Well, that kind of killed one partial segment because anybody who's been following this has been about 90% sure that Sharon Moore would be named the next head coach. But I still was going to have some fun here with some other candidates, but that is dead and gone. And again, yes, Sharon Moore, 4-0 as coach this season. Coach won of the first 3 games against one of the cream puffs on their schedule, and then had the 3 difficult games at the end of the year against Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. And he navigated that like a pro. And so I did run a poll. We ran a poll on the Michigan channel and on Twitter, and we will give that a look. Brian, thank you so much for the super chat and letting us know for sure there. Sharon Moore announced as head coach just now. So there we go for timing. I guess that's either bad timing or good timing because I checked right before we started and it wasn't announced yet. So I thought we might take the conversation a couple different ways, even though, again, we were all pretty sure it was going to be Sharon Moore. So I posted both on Twitter and on our Michigan YouTube channel. Let's see how this poll is going as it stands right now. I may have to refresh this. So we simply asked, is Sharon Moore, are we seeing this? Yes. Is Sharon Moore the best choice available as Michigan's next head coach? And overwhelmingly, Michigan fans say yes to 117 votes. And so thanks for taking part in the poll, especially since it's only been posted for an hour and we already got 100+ votes there. And then on my Twitter, we got well over 100 votes already. Just posted that as well 15-20 minutes ago, and 70% of you, and that's a little bit more of College Football Nation and less Michigan Wolverine Nation, saying that Sharon Moore is the guy for the job. So I know we've talked to a lot of people that have called over the last several days. Some have said, hey, would like an experienced coach, a guy that has proven something on the big stage. But I think most Michigan fans saw enough and were happy, or maybe they just are talking themselves into being happy, thinking we knew it was going to be Sharon Moore. We might as well support it and support him. And so here we go. Have any thoughts, Tim, about the situation Sharon Moore faced this year and whether you can't not be impressed with it, but I think different people are impressed to different degrees.
Well, I mean, he's come up through the ranks, but he was a tight ends coach, offensive line coach, promoted, and then he became the offensive coordinator. I think it's good. He's shown that he can coach and hold that team together, right? And we've seen what happens to a roster if you kind of lose that continuity, maybe go to an outside hire. You're probably going to lose a big chunk of the roster that may or may not stay anyway, but we will see. I think this wasn't, a no-brainer, easy hire, and most likely what was going to happen with the hire. And the second part, the shoe that's going to drop is going to be the mentor following Harbaugh, most likely to the Chargers. And I wonder what that does to the defense. So I'm not sure what's going on outside my house, and I'm not sure.
Hopefully nothing involving the Prangley household there.
No, thank goodness. No, I'm lucky. I live by a police station, so that's and the middle school, so good location. So I'm really interested to see this. How can it hold the roster together? Like you said, they lose a bunch of people to the draft, but I think that you will see over the next couple of days how Sharon Moore is going to fill in his coaching staff, and that's going to probably tell us a lot what's going to be like at Michigan in 2024.
We did a transfer portal update this afternoon, and we had somebody comment and appreciate their super chat. But basically, a Michigan fan defending the stance of the Michigan program and the culture, and Sharon Moore's done a great job, and people are saying that he's not a top flight hire and talking about elite status at Michigan. And my only question there is, and it can't be answered because anybody who thinks that they have the answer on how a particular program is going to perform going forward, of course, none of us have a crystal ball that's accurate. But when you think about it, even Michigan's last national championship in 1997, it was not surrounded by elite seasons. They were not an elite program when they won that national championship. They were a 8-4 team the year before, and they were a 9-3 team the year after. They were a good team. They were a good program. They were a top 10 to 15 program. And I'm not talking all-time, folks. I'm talking about in that current place in college football in the mid to late 90s. And they put together a magical season with a really good team and just cycled up, won the national title, and then they were back down to 3 losses a year. And now we've got a situation with Jim Harbaugh where I would argue that he has sustained elite status. He's been able to reach it. 2021, you could say that they were far from Georgia, so they obviously got trampled on the field, but they had reached a Big Ten championship playoff appearance, only 2 losses that year. Then the next year, of course, they take another step with only 1 loss, and then they beat Ohio State again in a third year and win the national championship. So they've been an elite team / program for 3 years now. So it's been sustained for a small period of time. We're not talking about Jim Tressel's Ohio State teams for a decade, Pete Carroll's decade-long dominance, elite status, and of course, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. But we're talking about 3 years. So is Michigan going to be one of those programs that rules college football, or are they going to kind of settle back into where Michigan has been for 40 years?
Depends who they have behind. It's going to have a lot to do with who they have behind. Because again, like you said, they're losing a heck of a lot of their production. And we've seen with those COVID years, some guys getting a 6th, 7th year. I'm not saying that's Michigan. I'm saying in general, you have a lot of players long in the tooth over there, and it will be interesting to see if they can continue. And again, if you listen to Wolverine fans, they say yes, it's a culture thing. They've been building it up, building from the inside out, right, from the trenches. So usually that's a formula that does work. If you continue keeping Sharon Moore there, with that offensive line that I know that the Moore Award went to Washington, but then they won it 2 straight before that, right? So that's how they've been doing it. They've been building it by bully ball and and controlling the ball and playing tough defense. We got to see if Minter is going to remain on staff. If not, which everyone believes he's going to go with Jim Harbaugh. Because Minter's an NFL guy, right? He's comes from that Baltimore line, so he's most likely making that next move. But it'll be interesting to see how Sharon Moore can replace that staff, and I'm sure that'll be the number one thing that they'll be doing very shortly here, if not already.
Folks, we're talking Big Ten football with all of you. We do this each and every Friday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 Pacific. Give us a call, 888-997-4539. 4539. 888-997-4539. Yes, I can read. My writing's getting worse the older I get. We had to bring in the stagehand. It took hours and hours of labor, but we rearranged the look on the staging back here to, of course, reflect the current Big Ten members and, of course, give Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. I've got all 4 of them in their prominent places there. So, all right. I was going to get to this Washington situation because they are just losing players by the hour. But before that, I found it interesting, Tim, that I came across your old buddy Alex Grinch got a job today as safeties coach at Wisconsin. That's probably about where he belongs.
The Peter principle, right? I mean, he kind of ascended, and now he's just settled back down. And and hopefully, fill that position well.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You can be a safeties coach at Wisconsin, make a nice living. He's probably making, I don't know, $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 a year. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that goes a long way in Madison, Wisconsin, especially. So good for him. The Washington exodus has been quite alarming. And I don't get alarmed by these transfer portal lists anymore because everybody's got a list that's 10, 12, 15 long. I think Washington's up to 23. And it is just massive. So earlier today, we did our Oklahoma live show and talked to Parker Thune from Rivals. And he let us know that there's an offensive lineman that we will get to, one of Washington's starters, one of their best offensive linemen, most likely headed to Oklahoma. We'll get to that name in just a minute. Then the previous day, we were breaking down the transfer portal, and the two starting guards at Washington, both of their starting guards, one of them, one of the best players in the country at that position, both go to Ole Miss on the same day. And so they are losing all kinds of players. I think the count is now 23. So let's see what we got here. It's hard to manage this. There we go. Get these banners out of the way. We've got, this is the only listing today, I believe. Defensive back Asa Turner committed to Florida. So there you've got one Washington defection at the safety position. Then if you look, and I thought this was interesting, and just again, confirmation of the power structure of college football, Tim, we've got the 10 highest rated players in the transfer portal, and they are all going to Big Ten and SEC teams. Every one of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a trend that's probably not going to reverse anytime soon.
And so we see, we were talking about Arizona retention. So one of their starting offensive linemen right there, Raymond Polito. I know we're not talking Arizona in the Big 12, but he is sticking around, and Brent Brennan's done a nice job there. Let's see, where are there were more Washington defections. They are all over the place. They actually get a guy back in Kamari House. He's just an early enrollee, has yet to play. But again, the offensive line with Washington, with the Huskies, has been completely ravaged. They've got a 4-star offensive lineman, so this is just a signee, but he was a top 20 rated interior guard center type. He's in the portal. He just announced in the last day or two. And so I don't know what's going on at Washington. Peyton Waters was one of their best in the class of 24, early enrollee. So he was set to start practice, get underway with winter workouts in Washington, and he hits the portal. And on and on and on. Again, the offensive line in particular has been ravaged, and they lose their best, most likely they lose their best cornerback in Jabbar Muhammad. And there you see another signee taking off. And of course, their future at quarterback in Austin Mack, he has decided to move on as well.
Mark, got your first call of the night.
Nice.
You ready?
We'll take it.
All right, caller. Hi. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey man, it's Michigan man. No, calling from Michigan. Yeah, man. They at the right time. I would like to know if, I guess they had a waiver, but this is the best outcome that they announced this early. I don't see a lot of people transferring, if at all. You might get a couple loose stragglers, but I think out of all the coaching vacancies, with this one being resolved, I don't see any major transfers happening.
Yeah, I think this is just a different situation. Every other coach that has left a program this offseason has gone to another program in college football, and so that they can be chased to the next job, except for Nick Saban, of course, and except for Jim Harbaugh. So, and then also just with the huge amount of NFL draft eligible players, we're talking about less players that of significance that could leave.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm excited, man. Obviously, I'm still sad that Harbaugh left, but I think all the scenarios, this is the best that, in my opinion, it could have gone. And Jim Harbaugh eventually did leave, because let's be real, there was always a huge chance that he was going to leave Michigan. It happened, honestly, probably at the right time. He won the national championship. He did everything he was supposed to do. And he's hiring someone that he clearly brought up through the ranks himself, that he's mentored. And I'm excited to see how I think, it's going to be nice not having any off-season distractions every year. And from what I heard is Sharon Moore he wants to double the recruiting department. He wants to focus more recruiting. He wants to compete in ways that Harbaugh kind of didn't. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Michigan man, on the heels of your call the other night where you let us know that you believe that there should be a statue. No. You were saying, let me correct that. I'm getting my stories confused. You were the guy that said that Jim Harbaugh is arguably the greatest coach in the Big Ten since Woody Hayes. Still with us, Michigan man? Okay. So anyway, we were on the line with Michigan man the other night, and right after the Jim Harbaugh news broke, he was making the claim that Jim Harbaugh should be considered the greatest coach in the Big Ten since Woody Hayes. I think there's an argument there. I certainly don't believe it's a slam dunk. There are guys like Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer who have much better winning percentages. Now, off the heels of that comment, I hit Twitter and saw a certain Michigan site. I'm not even going to name them because they're good to us, and their guys come on here and have for a long time, but they they left themselves up just to be ridiculed because they posted something that the statue of Jim Harbaugh needs to go up like right now. And you can imagine, Tim, the responses to this. People had some great lines.
Michigan man's back to respond.
Oh,
you there?
Okay.
Hey, Mark, I don't know what happened, man. You started sounding like a robot, and then it just hung up. So I didn't even hear what you were saying.
Okay. What I was saying was the last time you called, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you either said that it's a great argument whether Jim Harbaugh is the greatest Big Ten coach since Woody Hayes, or that he definitely is.
Oh, I wouldn't say he definitely is, but I think he has a great argument. In my opinion, he is. I think you could make argument. The only other coach you can make an argument for is Tressel,
not Urban Meyer.
But yeah, no, and for the reasons I stated last time, I could restate those, but
yeah, let's hear the Urban Meyer argument against.
So the reason I put Harbaugh over Urban Meyer is because, one, the state of the program when Harbaugh took over, Urban Meyer had the luxury, similar to Tressel towards the end of Michigan's run when Tressel was there, of going against Brady Hoke-led Michigan teams, a sanctioned Penn State. He won his title 14-1. He never won 3 consecutive undisputed Big Ten titles. He didn't have to deal with the talent discrepancy. I would say Harbaugh's road at Michigan was tougher than Urban Meyer's road at Ohio State. When Jim Harbaugh came to Michigan, Urban Meyer was already at the height of the game. They had just won a national title, so that means Harbaugh competing with that right out the gate. He had to completely rebuild the program, not necessarily from a recruiting standpoint, but even then there was a huge gap there. And I would argue that the past 3 runs, talking about a peak of excellence, I would say the last 3 years of Harbaugh's tenure is greater than any period under Urban Meyer. Even though Urban Meyer, I would argue, had a longer stretch of excellence, it wasn't quite at the peak of these last 3 years. And the teams that Harbaugh had to beat to win the Big Ten title these last 3 years are better than any Michigan team that Urban Meyer had to beat to win any of the big titles he had won.
That's fair. I have no issue with any of those points. Yeah, if you're just looking at flat out success, though, Urban Meyer has it all over Jim Harbaugh during his tenure. He was just much more successful start to finish. It's not even close. And obviously he went, 5-0 against Jim Harbaugh? Yeah, he went 5-0. 4-0.
Yeah, and honestly, and I was one of those fans that I wouldn't have been surprised if he had a losing record against, because like I said, when he came to Michigan, Urban Meyer's program at Ohio State was already revving at full steam. Already won a national championship. The recruiting was top 3 in the nation. So he was already on an uphill climb. So even if he got, that 2016 win and maybe another win, it was always more expected that Urban Meyer, in my opinion, should have had a winning record. Maybe not 5-0, but should have had a winning record over Jim Harbaugh, considering the state of the program. So yeah,
I'm with you.
That 5-0 record, Mark, that includes obviously when he other teams he was at, correct? Or he had 5.
Urban Meyer.
No,
Urban Meyer was 7-0 against Michigan, and he beat Harbaugh 4 times, and he beat other coaches 3 times.
So Urban Meyer beat Harbaugh at Michigan 4 times, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. The one thing I do have to agree about here is the fact that he did walk in. Tressel did have that thing set for Urban Meyer. I mean, building something is important.
They were a year removed from really having it set. They had an excellent team in 2010 that was a top 5 team, and then that got decimated. Decimated is a strong term. It got damaged by probation and early entries to the NFL that would not have happened had they not been put on probation. And then Urban Meyer took over.
Right, but I mean, when we say probation and we say the sanctions that it was fairly minimal, really. It's not like, for instance, it's not like I don't know USC losing 30 scholarships. It wasn't like that. It was a little bump. And Harbaugh's done it. He did it at University of San Diego. He did it at Stanford as well. I mean, he's done it at every.
That's not the debate, though. The debate's as a Big Ten coach.
Okay.
And Urban Meyer.
I'm not arguing that Urban Meyer isn't the better overall coach. I'm not arguing that.
No, I think you get a great point.
Better Big Ten coach.
Yeah, you make great points. Absolutely. I'm not. You notice I'm not jumping on any of those points because I think they're all valid. I'm just providing a little pushback. And Urban Meyer could have won one other national. Well, he could have won several national championships, but that's his issue. Could have won one the first year had they not been on probation.
Yeah, 12-0 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could have. And like I said, he hit Urban Meyer's best run, which is the first 3 seasons that include a national championship. I would argue that actually it was not even an argument. He didn't play another elite team in the Big Ten. There wasn't another elite team in that path until he pretty much played Alabama in 2014. Harbaugh had to play elite Ohio State teams every year just to have a chance. And the past 3 years he's had now this year that's debatable, but the CJ Stroud teams, those are elite teams that he had to go through just to have a chance at a championship. Urban Meyer's most successful run, which was the first 3 years, what elite team was he playing in the Big Ten to get to where he wanted to go.
The best team they were playing was Michigan State, but I'm not going to call them elite. But they did win a Rose Bowl and won the Big Ten championship during that time. And then the next year they won a New Year's Six game and finished in the top 5 or 6 in the country.
Yeah, that's the closest for sure.
But yeah, you make all great points.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's just where I'm landing on it. And yeah, I think he should get a statue personally. But at the same time, as great of a coach, I've always separated coaching and recruiting. If there's one area he did lack, and I don't think anyone could debate this, it was recruiting, especially the last 3 years. And a lot of that has to do with his flirtation with the NFL. Maybe Sharon's not maybe. He has to prove it. He's not as good as the coach as Harbaugh, obviously, because we have yet to see that. But I think one area where he could improve the program greatly is recruiting.
I hear you, Michigan man. We appreciate you stopping by, man. Anything else?
No, that's it, man. Let's see how this next year goes, man. And I'm rooting for Sharon Moore to hopefully just carry the torch and be a good prince to the throne, so to speak. So, all right, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. All right, let's pick up a super chat, and then we'll take the next call. We've got Eric chiming in. Appreciate you, Eric. Sorry, off the subject. Love everything you do, but every time Chris calls on a show, it is painful to listen to. I enjoy when you, Tim, John, Jackson, and so on have great conversations. The thing I'll say about Chris, you guys need to understand that the reason Chris is on the line for so long, guess what the reason is? Because nobody else is calling. So if somebody else wants to call, we will knock him off immediately. So you guys have all controlled that. All right.
We whoever's called, we just lost 2 calls, but we go ahead and call back in. Not sure if they dropped their call or if they just hung up, but we don't have a call in line right now, actually. So, Chris, if you're out there, it's your time to call.
Yes, exactly. On our last show, Erica, Iowa fan Erica, we appreciate her loyal viewership. She had posed a couple candidates that are being tossed around for the Iowa offensive coordinator's position that has been open way too long. But Kevin Johns of Duke, after reviewing their careers, resumes, their successes, I would give the nod over Tim Lester, most recently the head coach at Western Michigan. He spent his season with the Packers just this past fall, but before that was the Western Michigan head coach between PJ Fleck and 2023. But Kevin Johns, the work that he did at Duke and at a few other stops was pretty impressive. So still awaiting what I was going to do about that offense and who's going to come in to be the savior. We are going to release some Big Ten quarterback rankings here soon. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot more upheaval with acquisitions and the transfer portal. You'd never know. But I was reviewing situations across the Big Ten in regards to starting quarterback positions, and I think we're in a good spot to deliver our Big Ten quarterback rankings here soon. So we will get to that. And our coaches rankings. Tim always loves the coaches rankings here at the Voice of College Football. And now that we got our guy Lincoln Riley in the Big Ten, we can double up on the Lincoln Riley rankings with the Big Ten coaches and then also nationally.
I just hope he cracks the top 10. That's what I'm waiting for.
Okay. I'm going to double check on his ranking from last year because it might be a little bit better than you remember it.
Okay. I like giving you a hard time about that ranking.
I think it was number 12 one time, and you weren't too happy about that.
I'm not saying he's top 3, but I'm definitely, I got you got to securely put him within the top 10.
Yeah, I'll have to try to track that down, but we enjoy the coaches' rankings, and we will get to those here soon. Absolutely. Give us a call, folks. 888-997-4539. You see it on the ticker there, 888-997-4539.
Yep. Next caller. How you doing? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Peter, I'm calling from Ann Arbor, Michigan, but I'm a Buckeye fan.
Ooh. Okay. You're brave.
Yeah. And I got some thoughts on Sharon Moore's hiring. I'm not overly impressed, to be honest. I think it was a smart move for team retention. But in terms of recruiting success, I know he's talking a big game. He wants to expand. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. But I honestly don't think he's the man for the job, and I'm elated that he got hired.
Well, is there anything that he's failed to do that causes you to think that?
Well, here's the thing, and maybe this is a low blow, and maybe it's a little uncalled for. But his post-game interview after the Penn State game made me think he's a little unstable.
I knew it was coming.
And emotionally unstable. Yeah. And I just feel like he's not mature enough for the position of head coach to delegate to this assistant, to hire the right assistant. He has to fill his old position as the offensive coordinator now, of course. And that's a very important hire because, let's be honest, the cupboard is a little bare on the offensive side, especially at quarterback. Orgy's not it. Denegal's not it. In my opinion, they have to land a transfer portal quarterback if they're going to compete for anything of substance next season. If you're asking me. Now, that's a biased Buckeye opinion. I get that. Take it with a grain of salt. But that's just how I feel. And I'm quite enthused he's the head coach.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that part of it because that's where I thought you were headed in terms of the emotion he showed after the Penn State game, because Tim and I were talking about Lincoln Riley just a second ago, and Lincoln Riley made a statement that I thought was very interesting late in the season, once they started to take a couple L's, and he was asked some questions that led him to reflect upon his time as an assistant coach, coordinator, and then head coach. And he was looking back and stating how he is a much different coach today and handles adversity and challenges and the up and down nature of the sport much different than he did 10 or 12 years ago. And he's learned that you can't be flying back and forth up and down. You're running a program with 100 athletes and about 150 people, and you have to be poised and you have to be the same guy every day and you have to be consistent.
And I'm not saying he won't grow into the role. I'm not saying maybe eventually he'll be a terrific head coach. He could be. I just don't think it'll be at Michigan, because I don't think he'll last at Michigan in my estimation of how things are going to go. And I don't think Michigan's going to fall off a cliff next year. I think 9-3 is their floor. I think 11-1 is the best they'll do. They will not represent the Big Ten in Indianapolis. And there'll be a fringe playoff team, if you ask me, because I am predicting a 9-3 season. They play Texas, they play USC, Washington, and I believe they play obviously Ohio State as well. Do they play Oregon? I can't remember, but I know they have an extremely tough schedule, and they're going to have some leeway, of course, first year head coach, but how much patience are they going to extend after the highs that they've faced now with 3 straight Big Ten championship seasons? There will not be a fourth, mark my words. And just maybe the comment section is blowing up a little bit right now. Well, what about Ryan Day? His emotional outburst after the Notre Dame game. What about that? Well, he showed some emotion, yes, but he was very articulate and poised and in control of that entire discussion and interview.
Hang on, Peter.
I view the emotions differently.
Hang on, Peter. We both watched that. He was poised and in control of his emotions during that post game.
He was articulate. Okay. Maybe not in control of his emotion, but he was very articulate. Sharon Moore was blubbering like a child.
I'm going to agree with both of you because Tim stepped in with the same thought that I had, is that, he wasn't under control and poised.
That's a fair
Poised is not
critique.
the word I would use, but you're right. He was articulate. He was very strong in his speech and very clear, and it made sense. Yeah, Sharon Moore was just kind of, yeah, I'll use the same word, blubbering. Yeah, kind of staggering around.
Sure. So I don't know. I mean, they're just my thoughts, and there's some strong opinions. I get that, but I just wanted to jump on for a sec, share my thoughts on the hire. I am elated as a Buckeye. I think Ohio State is going to make a serious run in the Big Ten. They'll have be a top 4 seed in the playoffs next year. They'll have a home game in Columbus in the new 12-team era of the playoffs, and I'm elated at what is to come. You can't put the cart before the horse, but I would predict a Big Ten championship for my Buckeyes next season.
All right, Peter. No reason not
That's all
to,
I got for
but
tonight.
we shall see. Thanks,
shall
Peter.
see.
Appreciate you being here, man.
Yep. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Yeah, great call. Great call. We got another call coming in next, but I'm curious from the Michigan fans out there as well. You guys, so we know that the most likely is going to be a defensive coordinator job opening up. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys what that, who do you think that should be? I know that Jim Leonard's still out there, and I've heard that name popped around. Who do you guys want for your defensive coordinator? Hello, caller. You're on with Mark. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Charlie from Chicago. How are you guys?
Hey, Charlie. How you doing?
Good. Want to touch base on the Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh comment. Let's just say, let's move forward a couple years in advance, and let's say that Jim Harbaugh does win the Super Bowl. In terms of coaching, overall wise, would you say at that point that Jim Harbaugh would be the better coach than Urban Meyer was?
If you took
because of the success in both.
If you took a Spanos owned team, the Chargers, to the Super Bowl in 2 years, I think he's going to be up for the greatest coach of all time. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the thing about Urban Meyer is, yes, he definitely had success in collegiate level, but he had difficulty in the NFL because you just can't coach pro players the way you did back then. But also with the transfer portal now, like if Urban Meyer was coaching collegiate right now, I'm not sure he would have the same success anymore.
Well, it's certainly reasonable to have that question, but if we're ranking and rating coaches, you can't make that statement or that knock against him. But as part of a discussion, absolutely. I think that would be a challenge for him, and I also question it. But if we're ranking him as a coach, then we might as well say the same thing about Bear Bryant.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and then my second question is, I'm really curious. You talk about the QB rankings. I'm really curious about freshman QBs who's going to start. For Michigan, you got, is it Jaden Davis? I've been hearing good things about him. I'm not sure if he's going to be ready to start. And then from Nebraska, you got Dylan Raiola. Just wondering, freshman quarterback starting year one, how that's going to work out, or any other freshman who would make an impact.
Well, the two best examples I can think of off the top of my head would be both at Clemson, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and neither one of them started week one. They both started about week 4, but they both had tremendous freshman seasons, especially Trevor Lawrence. And Deshaun Watson did as well, but he got hurt at one point, and they didn't have nearly as good a team. But that's a lot to ask. Bryce Young was technically a freshman, but he was a redshirt freshman. He played as a freshman. He threw 5 or 10 passes, but he was in the system on campus, going through the reps, all of that. So my goodness, a true freshman that has played at a place like that and delivered. Those are the first two that come to mind. Christian Hackenberg actually had a pretty good true freshman season at Penn State, despite when we were talking about what the Big Ten looked like under Urban Meyer at that point. with Bill O'Brien at Penn State, he coached up Christian Hackenberg to a really good freshman season, considering the circumstances, especially in 2012.
Yeah.
Wasn't Tim Caleb Williams' first season with Oklahoma? Spencer Rattler won the job, was the starter, and then Williams comes in halftime at the Texas game. They're down by 3 or 4 touchdowns and comes back and leads them to victory and takes over the job. That was his freshman.
That's true freshman year, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Hey, Tim, question for you. I know we spoke about it last week, is with the 4 teams coming in, assuming Oregon would probably rank the highest of the new 4 schools in the Big Ten, how do you think the other 3 would rank in the Big Ten?
Wow.
Well, I mean, the second best, third best, fourth record.
Yeah, I mean, I think Oregon's going to be probably going in the second best team in the Big Ten. Where I don't know, USC is too much of a wild card. Washington's been decimated, so they're probably going to be dropping weight. It's too hard. They're middle of the pack, probably. UCLA, okay. UCLA again is another mystery because they just lost Danton Lynn. How much of that what we saw last year? They lose Latu, they lose the Murphy twins, they lose a lot on defense. They're probably gonna take a huge step back. But again, you just don't know because it's too many variables. I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know enough about the Big Ten right now. Once you get past the big 3 in the Big Ten, it's kind of hard for me at this point. I'm brand new to your guys' conference, so I'm kind of curious to see where they fall as well.
I know it's a whole new world. You'll be curious to see how everything falls into place next year or this coming year.
Oh, it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
I love it.
My final thought is just like the way that things ended with Harbaugh. I'm glad that he did go to the NFL. I think that you just love storylines, and I think he went out the way he was supposed to. I think about when Scott Frost took over for Nebraska, everyone, including me, thought that it was a home run hire, and that story never turned out the way it was supposed to. But with the Jim Harbaugh story, it actually did. So I'm gonna be rooting for him in the NFL and see how it turns out. So,
and guys like that. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, Charlie, it's amazing, and I've thought about this ever since Michigan's resurgence, because of all the conversations we were having on here in 2019 and especially 2020 about Jim Harbaugh, that I would love to go back and rip through some live streams from back then and certainly go through the comments at the comments section, because I've already pulled a few of them to see what was being said about Jim Harbaugh at that time. But a lot of the parallels were being made between Scott Frost and Jim Harbaugh. And there was no reason not to believe that Scott Frost was a good hire. I don't know of anyone who said that was a bad hire. He's the native son. He loves the school. He knows the terrain, the campus, the whole deal. So he's got that locked down. And then in addition to that, takes over an 0-12 UCF team and turns them into an undefeated team within 2 years. And then he tears it up at Oregon before that as the offensive coordinator. It seemed like the hire to make.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, we appreciate you.
I know Scott Frost is a punching bag. Yeah. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. I was just going to make a quick point that with Jim Harbaugh, he's just another one, almost like a Pete Carroll, where you just knew that he wanted to make his stamp, but his eyes were always on going back to the NFL. Those NFL guys always want to get back to the NFL. Thanks for calling. You're on with Mark. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Moose from Michigan.
Moose. The Moose.
Hey, this is from Michigan.
How you doing, Moose?
What's going on, Mark?
Moose, you might need to turn your TV down,
Tim?
I think. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, whatever's on in the background, Moose, if you could just turn that down for us.
About that.
Thank you. What's up?
So just to talk about the whole Jim Harbaugh thing. Most of us kind of figured he was going to the Chargers. I mean, I even picked him to go to the Chargers, but now I'm kind of sad that he's gone, but I'm kind of glad at the same time because his NFL shenanigans was really hurting our recruiting the last 3 years. So in a way, I'm kind of relieved. My first choice was Jesse Minter, but it's looking like he's going to go to the Chargers with Harbaugh now. So he was my first choice, but Moore was my second choice. I mean, I'm okay with Moore. I mean, I'm going to give him a chance to see how he does, but I think he's going to do better in recruiting just because he has he's better with recruits, these young recruits, than I think Jim is. As for defensive coordinator, I was looking at maybe McDonald. I don't know if he's available, but McDonald from the Ravens. I also heard that Orr is another guy from the Ravens. He might be one of those guys. And also Jim Leonard, too. I was also thinking about Jim Leonard, but I just heard that maybe Jim Leonard, I don't know if it's confirmed yet, but they said he might be going to the Packers. So
Leonard to the Packers has been going on for a long time. I mean, where he ends up, it seems like his heart's in the pros. Let's put it that way, because he's turned down a number of jobs, including one I know well. So, I think though, I think that Michigan's going to put the problem, and it's late. It's so late in this. When you lose a coach now, it's like all the coach. It's just rough sledding trying to find that quality guy to take the job. So that's what Michigan's going to face right now, and that's why you're kind of facing with Sherrone Moore. And you're saying he's going to recruit better than Jim Harbaugh, but has he climbed up any tree houses yet? I don't know. We'll see if he's willing to pull up those sleeves and do some overnights in tree houses. And then he'll show me his commitment to recruiting.
Yeah, I don't think Moore's crying is going to help either. But anyways, so yeah, I just don't know. Like and with all the people that Michigan's losing in the draft, I mean, we're going to be losing a lot of people. I'm hopeful for 2024, but it's like us, and that schedule that we have is going to be really brutal. So I'm hoping that we can get at least 8 or 9 wins next year. I mean, that's probably even 10 would be ginormous for Michigan, considering all the people they're losing. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be a new challenge for Michigan. But I think if we get the right pieces, we'll be there.
I think you guys are okay on the offensive
Thanks,
side.
guys.
Well, Moose, real quick, I got a question for you. I know you guys will be okay probably on the offensive side, right, with Sherrone taking over. But if Minter, and that looks like what's going to happen, leaves, are you worried about Mason, big time guys, like if you're losing maybe a Mason Graham or Will Johnson, one of your big time players to the portal?
Yeah, it's definitely going to hurt because Minter's, man, he's a really good defensive coordinator. But I was watching Twitter. I didn't see very many sad reactions from some of the players that we're getting, some of the recruits that we already got. I did see one from Dominic Nichols when he heard that Jim was leaving. He had kind of a frown face, but from most of the stuff that I've seen, they're bummed that Jim is leaving, but at the same time they trust in Sherrone Moore and the staff, and they trust him. So that's a good sign. It could be a lot worse. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think roster and your recruiting class should be safe on the offensive side of the ball. The question is going to be, you lose Minter, and then where's that stop? Do they take any of? I wish I could say I knew your coaching staff better, but when you bring in a new defensive coordinator, you're also going to probably bring in some new position coaches, and that side of the ball, as far as your recruiting class, might also take a big hit.
Yeah, to be honest, we got Graham coming back on defense. We got Will Johnson coming back. We got Moore coming back. We got Page. We got Stewart at defensive end. We got Grant at defensive tackle. I mean, I'm more worried about offense than I'm worried about defense right now. I think offense is going to be the question mark next year.
So
with
you
everyone we lost.
you think that Minter? I mean, I would have to say to you, I don't know if Minter is going to be that easy. You know, really in college football, even and in pros, those coordinators are really important to the success of your team. And you could have all the horses in the world. Like, I'm not saying USC, for instance, had a lot of great players, because they had some pretty good players on defense. However, if you don't have, now we're talking about extreme, obviously here. If you do not have the right scheme, the right coordinator that's coaching up that talent, it's, you could have 3 Mason. Well, if you had 3 Mason Grahams, you might be okay. But if you have the guys on the front that can protect you, but that scheme itself is not working, or they bring in a new defensive coordinator, and it takes time for this defense, right, to learn the scheme. That also could be some growing pains for Michigan.
And Moose, I think that's where you brought up the possible continuity of having Orr slide into that defensive coordinator position. So you mentioned McDonald. I would be surprised if McDonald slid back from the Ravens, because if you look at his last couple moves, he went from being on the Ravens defensive staff to coming back to Michigan to be the D coordinator. And then he elevates to Baltimore again, but to be the DC. I don't think he's going to be going back to college as a defensive coordinator. So I don't think that's going to happen. But you mentioned Orr, and I think that he being part of that staff and rubbing elbows and being close to Minter and McDonald, he might be the logical choice to keep this thing going and keep the continuity of the scheme and the approach.
Yeah, I had been hearing Orr's name a lot. I don't know if he's going to get it, but I'm wondering if Jim going to the Chargers, and if he brings a mentor with him, if that's going to burn Michigan's bridge with the Ravens. I don't know if they're going to be able to get anyone from the Ravens after that.
Well, it's not going to be as an obvious connection as it is now, of course. Harbaugh to Harbaugh. But I also think that I'm sorry, Moose, what's that?
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Well, going back to your original statement about hoping for 8 or 9 wins, I don't think Michigan fans should be selling this team short. I think 8 or 9 wins should be about what you would just kind of reasonably expect. But I don't think this team should in any way, especially in the Big Ten, not that it's not a great conference and won't be so much better this next year, but the non-conference game against Texas might be the toughest game on the schedule, aside from Ohio State, you would think. There are no games that are definite losses. I think that this team should, and the approach should be that they're gunning for a Big Ten championship. They have, as Tim mentioned, the guy that ran the offense back to run the offense, and we'll see what they do there with supplementing the offensive staff. They lose a ton on offense. I get it, but they still have one of the best backs in the conference and one of the best tight ends, I should say, in the conference coming back. They'll have a strong offensive line despite some losses. They need to figure out the quarterback position, and they lose wide receivers, but that wasn't necessarily a super strong position. And the defense is going to be, I don't know that it's going to be as good, but it's going to be, I'd be surprised if it's not a top 10 or 12 defense in the country.
Moose, let me ask you this question.
I think they definitely. Oh, sorry.
With all, okay, so this is tough because you don't know really who the DC is going to be and all the pieces, but with all the upheaval going on, with all the turnover, you would know your depth at all those positions. Where do you put Michigan as far as finishing against the new 4 members from the Pac-12? I'll flip the question I was asked earlier. So you're talking the national champions. There's been a lot of turmoil. I think most people would think that just from roster alone, you're looking at Oregon being the close number 2 to Ohio State. But then you got some question marks for the other 3. Would you put Michigan above all the other three as well? I'm curious in the chat too.
I think with everybody that we're losing, I think putting Ohio State and Oregon ahead of Michigan is fair at this point. I think USC will even be up there too. They're already improving their defense already, so they got a new defensive coordinator. So it's tough to say, man. Like, I would think that Michigan would be up at least in the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten coming into this year.
So
Now,
in the chat, let's go with.
You said it's hard to say.
So in the chat, let's go with this. If you think Michigan is going to win the Big Ten championship, you put a 1. Second, put a 2, 3, 4 on down the line of where you think Michigan's going to finish in the Big Ten.
And it's going to be really important who they hire to defensive coordinator, because you're going to have the spring portal. And as much as Michigan's losing a bunch of players, I guess that's going to mean they're also going to free up a heck of a lot of NIL money. So, and we know that your guys' collective or collectives are purring right now. So they're going to have a lot of money to spend in that spring portal. And that will be interesting to see who they bring in for your defensive coordinator and what kind of talent that could attract as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping now that Harbaugh. I'm not saying Harbaugh was the reason, but I think that's what was keeping us back from new. I think with more and other staff now, and I think things will be going in the right direction for Michigan as far as new and recruiting. I think it's going to be better.
Well, Uncle Rico, if they're going to be behind Penn State, that means they're behind SC, because SC is going to be ahead of Penn State. So you might as well.
You're sure of that, Tim?
No, I'm just trying to get people upset so they call in.
I was going to read them off here.
I'm
Moose,
not sure. I'm not sure of anything.
Anything else, Moose?
No, that's about it. Thanks, guys, for taking my call.
Man,
Moose, I haven't heard you this down in a long time, man. It's going to be all right. Your voice just doesn't sound right.
I sound different on the phone, but I have faith in my team. It's just I'm trying not to be arrogant and cocky. I'm just looking at everybody that we're losing. It's kind of hard to be like, oh yeah, we're going to win the Natty next year when we're possibly losing 17 to 22 players. So I mean,
Moose,
I'm a realist. I'm not an idiot.
You were the national champion. Be arrogant, be cocky, beat your chest, go crazy.
Yeah, you get at least at minimum 8 months of that, if not until someone else wins the championship. You guys are defending. Well, not like you said, Mark, not defending. You guys are the national champions of college football, so you get to be arrogant for at least a year.
That is true. Yep, for sure. All right,
Moose,
thanks,
we
guys.
appreciate it.
Go Blue.
Great call.
Thanks, man.
Really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm gonna try to channel my. Well, here's a question, Tim. Who wins an Oklahoma drill, the Trojan mascot or Brutus? Right, and I'm gonna try to channel my inner Mike Leach and ask you: does the Trojan have the sword? Because if he has the sword, he's gonna win for sure in that drill.
That's fair enough. So in the chat, our Michigan projections for this year. Lauren says second place. Mike says second place. Fisherman's got the complete top 5 there with Michigan at number 3. Moonbot, number 3. Moonbot, haven't seen you for a while. Good to have you here. This is a shocker. Champions Against the World says number 1. Big Ten.
I never would have guessed that one.
Go Blue at number 3. There's Uncle Rico, 4th place. D-Rock Irish. Can't forget you. Appreciate you being here. Notre Dame fan in the Big Ten show. Love that. At number 3. Dave's here, number 4. We've got Aaron predicting a 4th consecutive Big Ten championship. Mike's a realist, 4th place. We got James with a Big Ten championship. Clint. Oh, yeah. Clint just sticking it to the maize and blue. 6th place. Take that. We've got Hart to go. Michigan wins it again. Jason, 2nd place. Uncle Rico, we saw you at number 4. There we go. I believe that's it.
So for sixth place, I would have to be behind what, Iowa, USC? I don't know.
Something
Help,
like
help,
that.
help educate me, Big Ten fans.
I'd say Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Penn State, either Iowa or Wisconsin, maybe UCLA or Washington. I think they're both going to be in that 7 and 5 range. I'd have to look at the schedules, but
they're looking at filling in their staffs and also just losing a lot of players. So I don't know. I mean, you just went over Washington. I don't know what Washington's going to. Now, I will tell you that Jed Fish did a great job of turning that Arizona program that had 1 win, got him up to 10 wins this year, but he's not going to do it in 1 year.
Hummus Hero, last place. He was just kidding. He meant 17th place. Eric, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for the 5 spot there, 499 to be exact. I think it's Oregon and Ohio State. What is your opinion on Penn State? I don't think Drew is the answer. Young, but everyone called for Clifford's head. All right, here's my go at it, Eric, and we appreciate you being here. Is that, Drew Aller was unimpressive. He is going to be, at least if you look at 2023, the very worst quarterback you're ever going to see with a 20-1 touchdown to pick ratio. I know that he only threw 1 interception last year and 20 touchdowns at least. But man, it was rough to watch against Ohio State and Michigan in particular. He just, I think about some of the passes that I saw him throw against Michigan. He was just clearly, and I'm the last guy that tries to get inside guys' heads to figure out, or just watch the body language and be one of those guys that tries to interpret, where the confidence level is. But man, he was rattled in that game. And Ohio State pretty much did the same thing to him. He, at the same time, didn't have the weapons that some of the other better teams have. They had good weapons. They had complementary type players, but not the outstanding, really hit the chunk plays down the field. Now, surprisingly, coming off the Ohio State game in which they produced next to nothing on offense, he goes into the next week against Indiana. The Penn State defense probably had its worst game of the year, and Indiana was giving them a game. And with the game on the line, having thrown his first interception in his career, I was a bit surprised by this. For one thing, goes to show you that Tom Allen should not be a head coach at this high a level, is that he's playing with house money. He's got Indiana in the game in Happy Valley with a tie game, and he gets an interception on Drew Aller, and they're at like the 18-yard line of Penn State, and he just went into a shell and kicked a field goal to take a lead, just to grab a 3-point lead. And Drew Aller comes out, and there's only like 3 minutes left in the game. So you can seize control of the game. And I think they were up by a field goal. You could go up by 10, 2 scores. You could seize control of the game in the last 3 to 4 minutes of the game in Happy Valley, or you go into a shell, kick a field goal, and you still have Penn State within the score. Drew Aller comes out and throws a laser shot from about 65 yards down the right sideline for a touchdown. That was his best moment in terms of throwing the ball downfield in a clutch situation the entire season. But you're right. It did not look pretty for Drew Aller, but I hate to give up on guys after one season. And it wasn't incredibly ugly, like he didn't belong completely, but no, he was nothing close to an elite quarterback. They lose so much on defense. Their defense was sick, just so athletic, so fast. You're going to hear Penn State defenders called every 3 picks in the NFL draft. It's going to seem like it. And Manny Diaz, as we'll find out if he's ready to be a head coach again, but as a defensive coordinator, He knows what he's doing. So Penn State has lost quite a bit. They have kept the recruiting pace up to replace those guys, but until it's done on the field at that level in that conference, you don't know how they're going to respond. So I think it's reasonable to think that Penn State, especially with the increased schedule difficulty, and I'll have to give it a look to see who they pick up from the West Coast, may take a step back, meaning 8-4, 9-3. Thank you for that, Eric.
And also, wait, one more thing to remember is we're talking about usually quarterbacks make that huge leap in their second year. So you guys don't pull the plug on 1 year. So,
yeah. Just his first year. I am curious to see, does Penn State they go to the Coliseum, right? Do we know that?
They're at the Coliseum. We're at the Big House. And then we have Wisconsin as well.
So Penn State has a fairly tricky game going to Morgantown. So they beat up on West Virginia at home last year, but this year they've got to go to West Virginia, game 1, Bowling Green, Kent State. Okay, in conference, okay, UCLA and USC back-to-back weeks, home and road, and they've got Washington. So they're one of the few teams in the Big Ten that plays 3 of the 4 from the Pac-12. So that's going to be fun. And they also have Ohio State. Yeah, it looks like a 9-3 season. And that would be a good year. Give us a call, folks. 888-997-4539. Talk some Big Ten football with us. So much going on with Ohio State as well. We got a call, Tim?
No, sorry. I'm trying to, I got my show in a little over 30 minutes. I'm trying to upload get the stream ready. So you guys, I came straight here and hopped on. So I haven't had time to get really set for the whole night. So.
Good reminder for everyone. So the USC call-in show is coming up in just about 40 minutes over on the USC channel. 40 minutes with Tim and with Matt. Best call-in show going outside of this one. All right. Porter says that's so 2021. A phone number? Oh, come on. This is the way to do it. We get so many more different people calling us. It's so nice. It has been so nice. Tim, do you get into those position conversations, those arguments about RBU, QBU, tight end U, on and on and on?
It's just like all those lists, right? Everyone has their own metric for what it would be. Then also everyone arbitrarily sets, well, are we talking last 5 years, last 10 years since the NFL draft? They go back, they say, does their NFL play count, or is it more what they did, in college, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, if you're a USC fan, you're going to be in a lot of those conversations. So I've been in over the years.
Yeah, there was a quarterback discussion online today, and USC was a few people had challenged USC, and I jumped in with, oh my goodness, Pat Hayden, Vince Evans, Todd Marinovich, Paul McDonald, Matt Leinart, Cody Kessler, Matt Barkley, Sanchez, and Castle, and Carson Palmer, and Rodney Peete, and yes, on down the line.
Well, when you have 3 Heisman Trophy quarterbacks, that's just right there gives you some. And then when you have a guy that held a clipboard at USC and never really had a truly meaningful snap in his career, he go on to play 10 years in the NFL. Well, back up or play for 10 years in the NFL. that's also a little feather in the cap.
And that's a crazy thing when that happened, because I don't remember that happening before that with anyone, thinking, okay, this is a guy that couldn't get on the field in college, and he's a good NFL, like he's a decent NFL quarterback. And I didn't mention
really
Rob
close.
Johnson, who got paid pretty well in the league.
A lot of clipboard years for him too. But it was really close because there was a game early on against Arizona State that Leinart was hurt and pretty shaken up. And he just said, I'm not going to get Wally pipped. I'm going to stay on this field. I'm going to take us to a win, because if he doesn't, he knows that Castle's going to could possibly take that spot and hold on to it forever. I mean, that's how good Matt Castle was. So yeah, it's a good conversation to have about just having a backup player that doesn't really play at all and ends up having a double-digit NFL career. Wrong show, Mike.
Yes, I didn't even catch that. When it's here, Mike, it's 888-997-4539.
Well, we have another one. It's not an 800 number. It's a 323 number. We can put that one on, Mike, if this one offends you. We can definitely put the other one up, but it's not an 888 number. We're all on cell phones now, so it really doesn't matter. But you're not getting a long distance phone call.
We show no partiality to anyone in the Big Ten. No one. So that is the number, Porter. It's down on the ticker, 888-997-4539. And Porter is a faithful viewer, caller, as a Georgia fan, calling and commenting here in the Big Ten show. So we appreciate that. And we'll certainly let you know, Porter, if I can find time and find room in the right space for it, we may deliver an SEC show. We may get back on that, but I want to know that it's going to be accepted at the right time, and we're going to have an audience for it, and would love to be able to deliver a lot of great guests. Well, I got to say that I wanted to hit on Sharon Moore. I wanted to hit on Michigan retaining its team and having 0 players in the transfer portal. The Iowa offensive coordinator search and 2 candidates in particular, Tim Lester and Kevin Johns. We talked about that. Washington's many, meaning 23 transfer portal losses. Alex Grinch, the new safeties coach at Wisconsin, and that I'm gearing up to deliver Big Ten quarterback rankings and coaches rankings. So, hey, if we don't get any more calls, we can actually give Tim time to take a breath or two and down a cold beverage or something to eat or something before the next show.
Yeah, I'm failing. I am trying to multitask and try to set up in StreamYard and set up the stream for the 6 o'clock show and do this and do the chat. It's kind of tough to keep that juggling act going.
I do appreciate that this past week. So last Friday was our first move of the Big Ten Live show from Monday to Friday. So keep in mind, you can join John Diadamo on Mondays still at 8 p.m. Eastern time for the Ocho. That's Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time right here on the main channel. And again, this is a permanent move of the Big Ten Live show. And so we had a fairly low turnout last Friday night live at about 120 to 130 in the live audience, but you guys did deliver in nice numbers in watching the replay. So hoping for the same tonight, but making on back every Friday, folks. And this is something that we wanted to do for everyone that has trouble getting through on StreamYard. And that can be a difficult thing to maneuver, and wanted to supply the phone line for everyone on this show. All right. I think we've done our best, Tim.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all being here, folks, at the Big Ten Live show. In 34 minutes, Tim, Matt Zemek, both from Trojans Wire, talking USC football, taking your calls over on the USC channel here at the Voice of College Football. And as Moose is reminding everyone, when you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide in the description section. It does not cost you a penny. Same shopping experience. So we appreciate that. And just give it a try. You will find out it's completely transparent to you, and you help us grow and build the channel here at the Voice of College Football. Tim, have a great show. Appreciate you making this work for us. We'll see you back here, everyone, next Friday night. But in the meantime, over to the USC channel in 40 minutes. We will see you then.